Today is New Year's Eve, 2024. I figured no better day to do this. I'm here in the mountains in Georgia. This is the Toccoa Creek behind me, and we spent the last 6 days in this cabin exploring the North Georgia mountains. But I have a big announcement. Some of you guys have kind of figured this out, but I quit my job on the tugboat. Well, really I resigned. I didn't quit. It was amicable. Actually, since July. I didn't want to come out and make it known right away because I wasn't sure if it was going to stick or not. Basically, we've been doing, at that point in July, we'd been doing YouTube for 2 years. And the channel has grown exponentially, and that's in part to you guys. So thank you very much for all of my viewers and subscribers, and if you're new or old or you've been here the whole time, I want to thank you guys. I was working on a tug and we were doing that trip from Jacksonville, Florida down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And I have to be honest, that was my favorite job I've ever had in 16 years of working on ocean-going tugboats. I absolutely loved it. I liked the company I was working for. I liked the crew I was working with, for the most part. And I liked the boat. I liked the run. I loved going to Gitmo. It is an absolutely beautiful place. And, the run was something in the industry we call a milk run. It was pretty easy. I was working as the first mate on the boat. But what happened is part of business is the company I was working for lost the contract going back and forth to Guantanamo. They had been doing it 10 years, I think. And they just weren't going to do it anymore. I wasn't out of a job. But I was going to have to go back to not having a great schedule anymore, where I'd work kind of a month on, kind of a month off, but sometimes it'd go a week or two either way, and it just wasn't really going to work for me anymore. I looked at the income from YouTube, and I thought, well, maybe I can make life work doing this YouTube thing. Maybe it's real. And so I took a chance. I felt like it was the universe, God, kind of pushing me out of the nest. So I took a chance, and I resigned in July. And I've been doing just YouTube. Like I said, today is December 31st, the day before 2025. A couple of you guys in the comments have been asking, where's the tug? When are you going back to the tug? Well, I'm not. I still hold my license. For 16 years, I've been a merchant seaman. I specialized in tugboats. I still have lots of connections in the industry, and I may do some what you call trip work here, mostly just to maintain my license, make sure I don't forget how to do it, and maybe I can make some cool videos for you guys. I have some ideas for different content on different types of vessels that I'm going to work on here in the new year. So that's it. I made some notes though. I'm gonna explain how I started tugboating here. What I'm doing. Well, you know what I'm doing now. You guys see it every week. But so 16 years ago, I started tugboating in 2008. I was working in a warehouse, and I wasn't doing horrible for a kid that was 24, but I wasn't doing great. My dad passed away, and I kind of had, it's one of those, what are you doing with your life moments. I moved from Jupiter, Florida to Jacksonville, Florida, solely on the idea that it was a port town and that there would probably be tugboats there. I had heard from a friend who was working on tugboats in the Gulf of Mexico already, and I asked him, what do I have to do that? He told me what the basics are, what licenses I needed to go get. You need to get a Merchant Mariner's document, a TWIC card, couple other things. So I went and did that. And back then there was no Indeed like there is today, or the internet wasn't quite the same. So I literally started knocking on doors at tugboat companies in Jacksonville. I went out to Mobro Marine and Green Cove Springs, walked in their office, and asked for a job, not knowing anything about tugboats. Now, I had been around boats my whole life, fishing boats and stuff in Jupiter, so I felt like I I was going to be good at it. Any old ways. A lot of companies don't want to take a chance on a green guy. But they said, hey, we really like you. We just don't have anything right now. I got back in the truck. I was just over the bridge, Shands Bridge, that's on the St. Johns River. Called me up and said, could you go at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning? I said, yeah. He said, all right, come back with your bag packed. That's in my video about how to get a job on a tug. That's often how it happens. Somebody either quit, got fired, or didn't show up, and they were in a tight spot and they needed somebody, and I had just walked in there. So I went back home, packed my bag, and I think I went back that night and slept on the tug. I remember my very first job ever, we went on a push boat. We took 2 push boats down to Cape Canaveral, and I was tying something up, and I put my figure 8s and I put a hitch on top. And man, that captain laid into me, because on a tug, you don't ever do that. If it comes down tight, you'll never get that undone. On tugs, we just do figure 8s. And one of the senior deckhands kind of took me under his wing. He said, yeah, he kind of showed me the ropes. He was cool to me. That particular trip, we went down to Cape Canaveral in the ICW in push boats, the square tugs. And we got a warehouse barge that was brought in from Alabama. Now, in that warehouse barge, there was the fuel cell for the shuttle, which was pretty cool for my first job ever. One tug pushed, one tug pulled, and the offshore boat that brought it drafted too much water to take it all the way up. So we took it all the way up the Banana River and parked it at the launch site, and once we were cleared, we went. But it was kind of a cool thing to do as your first job. And over the years, I've done a lot of really cool stuff and seen a lot of really cool things. And honestly, if it wasn't for YouTube, there's nothing I'd rather do than be a tugboater. Let me see where I am in my notes. So how I got started in tugboating. So that's my first job. I ended up working at Mobro about 5 years, I believe. Where have I been on the tugs? So, talking about cool jobs. I've been all over the place. I've been out to the West Coast via the Panama Canal 6 or 8 times. I really lost count. And we were actually doing a lot of dead ship tows all the way from San Francisco to Brownsville, Texas. So we would go all the way out there, usually towing something, drop it off, and we'd go pick up one of these mothballed Navy ships, and we'd tow it all the way to the scrapyard in Brownsville, Texas. And that was really cool. And we caught a lot of really big fish out in the Pacific trolling, had some really good times. I was fortunate enough to work for some companies that are kind of old school. And, when we would go to these ports and stuff, we would get a chance to get off and go have fun, maybe see some sights, In the early days, we were pretty wild. I'll just leave it at that. So I've been all over the Caribbean. Obviously, I went to Gitmo a lot, but Colombia, St. Thomas, Antigua, places I probably don't even remember, St. Croix. I spent 3 years going back and forth to the Bahamas. I've been to West Africa working in the Nigerian oil field. I actually spent 6 months working over there in 2-month hitches, so I was flying back and forth. And that was a crazy experience because that place is wild. Like the Wild West, You'd fly in, we land at this place, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And that was when they were like kidnapping people and holding them ransom to your company. And it was during the Ebola scare I was over there. We're like, they're not going to let us back into the country. That's pretty much it. Up and down the East Coast, up and down the West Coast of the U.S. I've been over the Columbia River Bar, in and out of San Francisco quite a bit, Long Beach, just all over. Like I said, probably places I don't even remember. Why the name Tug Trash? So, before I ever had any thoughts of ever having a YouTube channel, I had an Instagram. And I was doing all kinds of cool, fun stuff. And originally it was just my name, Ian Sherman. And I said, I got to have one of these cool Instagram names like everybody. And Tug Trash is an industry term. It's kind of a joke. Being a merchant seaman, especially on tugboats, you go out, these guys, making 6 figures a year. But the guys that are hoss pipers like me are all a little wild, you know. Give redneck $100 a year, he's probably going to buy some dumb stuff, you know. So the term is, oh, he's tug trash, you know. So I put it on my Instagram. I never thought that anyone would really pay attention to me. And then my Instagram grew. I started doing TikToks. During COVID, I cooked something on the tug and I videoed it and I put it on TikTok and it got a bunch of views. And I was like, wow. And then I made TikToks for 2 years before I ever made YouTube. And it's all just cooking stuff mostly. But I had a little bit of success there. But you don't make any money with TikToks. So I started doing YouTubes. Like I said, for 2 years we put out at least one full-length video a week. And the channel grew to what it is today. How did I learn to cook? So I've always loved to cook. But I will say when I was tugboating, it really kind of polished my skill set. I grew up cooking, you know, whenever I grew up with just my mom. So a lot of times I would cook to help her out. If she was cooking, whatever, running the grill or stuff. Then once I got on tugs, as a deckhand, one of your main responsibilities is cooking for the crew, especially if you're the green guy, because you don't know how to do anything else. So it was about that time I got yelled at by the captain for putting a hitch in a line. I said, oh, I really don't actually know a whole lot about tugboats, and it's not like a fishing boat at all. I said, well, these guys all like to eat, and I can cook pretty good. If I cook them good food, maybe they won't fire me, and I can learn the rest as I go. So, you know, tugboaters, at least back in those days, were mostly meat and potato guys, you know. And I cooked for them, and they didn't fire me. And then I learned everything else. My favorite place I've ever been on the tugboat. I've been a bunch of cool places. I think going to Guantanamo Bay was my favorite because it was steady and I made some really cool friends down there. We would usually get at least one overnight while we were there. And as long as our duties on the tugs were taken care of, you know, we had done our paperwork, we had done our maintenance, we had done what we needed to do, get a couple hours off to go blow off some steam. And the waters there are beautiful. You can just bring a mask and a snorkel, wade right off the beach, and it's beautiful coral reef. I made friends with my buddy Greg down there, and he had a little boat. He started taking me spear fishing. A guy, Mike, took me out fishing. I caught a cubera snapper and some snook, and you know, so that was kind of my favorite, especially since I wasn't partying as hard anymore. And a lot of the early stuff, you just go out and party and do wild man stuff, but you know, I'd much rather dive and fish these days. It was my scariest trip ever. About the time I left Mobro, I was going to get my AB, which is like your next step up as a deckhand. And I just needed to kind of get away from there. I was searching for a schedule, and I knew a captain. He goes, hey, I got this thing. It's going to be going out of Miami down to Gitmo, actually, and to Haiti some, and it's going to be 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. It's going to be awesome. I said, all right, man, I'm coming. I'll pack my bag. I drove down there, and I pull up like a movie. I'm on the one side of the chain link fence, and I can see the tug on the other, on the Miami River there. I think we were in like little Havana area, little Haiti area. And I mean, this tug looks like it's been in a scrapyard for 20 years. And I'm like, oh man, old single screw tug, kind of dilapidated. Not what anyone is running for ocean towing. No towing winch. It was a hawser tow. It was like a 300 and something foot barge. Any old ways. We're going down to Haiti, and they haven't done the proper maintenance to this thing. We blow a steering pump, hydraulic fluid from the steering, and I go, where's the hydraulic tank? It's a 5-gallon bucket. I think we put that in there. We ended up putting all kinds of oil we had in there to try to get this thing, and just that slow rudder would just barely respond. And we're doing circles off the coast of Cuba. The Cuban government starts calling us on the radio going, what are you doing? But it's all in Spanish. So the other AB was actually from Puerto Rico, so I had to go wake him up. He could speak Spanish. He says, oh no, we're having steering problems. And you know, with a twin screw, you can kind of control what you're doing. But with a single screw, if your rudder's stuck a few degrees over, you're just going to do a big circle. Anyways, we got that fixed. It was rough weather, and it was things breaking, you know. I end up getting down there, and I'm like, man, I quit. I'm going to fly. I was going to fly home from Port-au-Prince, and the captain, he was a buddy of mine. He says, just go back to Miami. Just help me get the boat back to Miami. So we got this old hunk of junk back to Miami, and I told him, actually, I said the barge was all messed up. It was a few trips after I quit that job. That barge sunk off of Miami, and the boat ran out of fuel trying to get it was just a mess. So learning experience, always vet your jobs very well before you start them. And that was a learning experience about sometimes, got to pay attention to what you're doing before you go sign on to a boat. What's the hardest part about being a tugboater? Honestly, the hardest part about being a tugboater is just getting along with everybody on the boat. You're generally on with 5 or 6 guys on these tugs. You're basically living in what amounts to a 1-bedroom apartment, but it's a lot of personalities, a lot of tough guys, rough guys. I think it's getting better, but when I started, man, there was just a lot of tug trash out there. And some trips, there's just one guy on the crew, and he don't care. He's going to make it. He's only happy when everybody else is miserable, and it's like he's sitting in the galley. He comes down to eat. Everybody else gets up and goes somewhere else, Getting along with everybody for extended periods of time offshore like that. And when I started, I'll start when I ended. We had Starlink internet. I could Facebook and Instagram and call and talk to anybody I wanted whenever I wanted. When I started, when you left that sea buoy, you lost cell phone service, and you didn't have a sat phone, you didn't have email, you didn't have nothing. Even when you would go to those foreign countries, they didn't have the cheap international plans that we have nowadays. I think I went someplace and I got like an $800 cell phone bill because I was calling and texting home and stuff, and they ran my bill up. But you didn't have anyone to talk to, so now you're stuck out there with a whole crew you don't like, or a guy you don't like, or something, and it can be pretty miserable. So that's the hardest part about the deal. So here's a funny one. I actually met Crystal because of tugboating. So for 3 years, I took a small tug out of Cape Canaveral back and forth to Andros, Bahamas with a barge. There's a small naval installation over there, and we brought all of their cargo. Stuff they just needed, everyday things. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was on a 1-week schedule, and we would work 28 on and 14 off on that boat. And so basically I would be in Cape Canaveral usually Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We'd leave Tuesday morning there and back, and we'd be back in the morning on Saturday. So spending a lot of time in Cape Canaveral. I met Crystal. We started hanging out and dating when I would be at work down there. And now she lives in my house. It's been, 7 years?
Something like that. Feels like 17.
But yeah, so in a roundabout sort of way, I met Crystal because of tugboating. So I think that's it for what I have on these notes. I just wanted to let you guys know what was going on. Like I said, I loved the job that I had, and if it wasn't for that I'm able to go and make these videos for you guys and do things that I truly love, I'm never going to do anything that I don't like for a video for you guys. I'm just documenting my life. I'm just showing you the stuff that I love to do in the outdoors: hunting, fishing, foraging, looking for shark's teeth,
Cooking,
going on vacations, being in places like this, where I can share them with you guys and, maybe help some of you in some way. Guys that maybe can't come do this anymore because they're older or whatever, they could live through the channel, or people that just want to learn about super cool places like this and get ideas for trips, or you just want some entertainment, whatever.
The recipes,
cooking. But there's nothing else I'd rather do than this, and it's because of you guys. Thank you very much. And you know what? If I have to go back to tugboating in 6 months, I will. No hard feelings. But for now, this is working out. I want to wish you guys a happy new year. Tomorrow is 2025.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bunch of really cool ideas and a bunch of really cool stuff that we're going to do for the channel, and we're going to share our lives with you every step of the way. So thank you. See you on the next one.